Welcome to Sex and Breakfast, the sexy way to start your day. Dishing out sexpert advice and spicy insights about sex, love, and everything in between. Hosted by sex coaches and therapists from around the globe.
Aloha, beautiful humans. This is Dominique, and this is a special Pride episode for all you people interested in LGBTQA plus community and those allies that support us. And it's something that's often overlooked, and that is being bisexual, especially in a world that wants everything to be in black and white. So let's just dive in. Because I'm a super nerd, let's talk a little about the history of the word bisexual, also known as etymology. The word bisexual comes from the Latin prefix bi, meaning two, and sexus, meaning sex. Originally in the late 19th century, bisexual was actually used to describe hermaphroditism, someone perceived to have both male and female biological traits. But by the early 20th century, especially in psychological texts, bisexuality evolved to describe romantic or sexual attraction to both men and women. So hermaphroditism is the former term, intersex is the new term. Now, language is constantly evolving, and as Noam Chomsky said, language is the most political thing that exists. And today, many bisexual people define their orientation as attraction to more than one gender, not just two. There's an important distinction. For some, bi means being attracted to similar and different genders. For others, it means multiple. This inclusive interpretation is why bisexuality remains an expansive, beautiful identity. People sometimes ask, how is bisexuality different from pansexuality or omnisexuality? Omnisexuality, I'll explain in a moment. Bisexual often emphasizes attraction to more than one gender, sometimes with gender playing a role in how someone experiences their attraction. Pansexual is generally described as an attraction regardless of gender. Gender isn't just a factor in the attraction. So it doesn't matter here, there, everywhere. Pansexuals are down for whatever. Omnisexual, this is a term that I recently learned. Omnisexual is similar to pan, but acknowledges gender, is noticed even if it doesn't limit attraction. So male, female, non-binary people. There's an overlap, and that's okay. Labels are tools, not cages. The point isn't to draw hard lines, it's to find language that resonates with your truth. And for millions of people, bisexual does just that. One client recently asked me, can I still call myself bi if I've never had a same-sex experience? So we're going to go into that. But that cracked something inside me so tender, and it's so common. So Nicole, I know you wanted to say something about this.
Yeah, this is such a tender and often heartbreaking topic. So, thank you, Dominique, for bringing this up. For clients who feel less than in this topic because they don't know exactly where they fit, many are attracted to the same sex but feel unsure how to explore that part of themselves or how to begin bridging the gap between identity and experience. And the uncertainty can be isolating, and the desire for clarity and connection I found can be like wrapped in fear and shame and confusion for a lot of
Yeah,
clients. Yeah.
absolutely. So bisexual people often sit in kind of this invisible space. It's not invisible, but it's like this feeling outside, but you're also not really inside. And that's in both the straight and queer world. So, and we'll talk more about this a little later. It's something called bi erasure, and it's real.
I'm based in California, which tends to be more progressive. But I always remind clients and our listeners from around the world that many people still live in environments where expressing any other than heterosexuality can lead to judgment or even persecution. The belief that you need to do something or have a certain kind of experience in order to be bisexual, gay, or anything else simply isn't true. Identity is about what feels true to you, not what you've done. So sadly, there are still so many people who feel they can't fully express their sexual selves because of fear, stigma, or even safety concerns. So that's why holding space for self identification without pressure or proof is so important.
And ditto to that, Nicole. Similarly, in my practice in Singapore and Indonesia, I encounter a lot of clients who are wondering about their bi identity, and sometimes it really clashes with their spiritual practices, religious belief, and of course, culture, especially if it is very steep. If the culture where they grow up with is very steep in cultural and religious values, so a lot of the work I do is to really help reconcile the client's spiritual values and how they are made by the divine without shaming, self punishing. And it can be a very heartbreaking, delicate, and difficult work. But I think it's also part of that spiritual growth and progress in a person. And sometimes it gets them to connect to the divine in a very deeper way and create a new meaning around it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I've lately been talking with a lot of clients about how to fill out their dating profile on a dating app. And apps like Field
Mhm.
uh, have many different um, sexual orientation options, and some of my clients have been struggling to like, do I am I bi enough to say I'm bi on my profile? And so we spend a lot of time going through some of the definitions that you presented at the top of this episode, and I work with them to just feel and lean into uh, what it feels like to actually say it on their profile. And I just say, well, the rest will come through the conversation you have with this person you're about to go on a date on. Don't worry about whether you're bi enough to use it on your profile.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, now is the perfect time to bring up the Kinsey scale. So Kinsey was a gentleman, I can't remember the year. It was the late or early 20th century or late 19th century. Anyone know? I
It's,
should
it's
know
in the
this.
fifth. It's in the 50s.
Ah, early
Yeah.
20th century. And he created something called the Kinsey scale. So Kinsey said he interviewed, I don't know, hundreds of people. And he said what he found out, his research found out, his study found out that because he was looking, trying to find the definition or the differentiation between straight people and gay people. And what he found was there's actually very few people that exist that were straight, like actually straight, 100% straight, and 100% gay. So that means everybody else filtered in the in between space. So um, wherever you are on the spectrum, so to speak, is okay, whether you're on the very end heterosexual, on the very end gay, or somewhere in between. So that means that most of the world is bisexual. That's actually how I like to think of it. So that leads me to going back to this in between space and what you're talking about, bi enough. I know that when I was younger, um, it was kind of taboo to be bi, even though it's been around for actually forever, I'm pretty sure, because it's just part of being a human being. There was this taboo about being bisexual, like it didn't exist. And it still kind of carries over now into, we're in the 2025 and it's still happening, right? So we're looking at does it exist? Absolutely. What does it mean? I explained that earlier. But there has something to do with being in a place where you're not bi enough. And it doesn't matter if you feel you're bi, you don't need to have an experience. You're bi. or if you think you're omnisexual or pansexual, you are that, because it's however you want to identify, right? So so what assumptions have people made based on who they're dating? And Norlin, you talked a little bit about that.
Yeah. One of the unfortunate assumptions that I hear is in a heterosexual partnership, if the female identified person comes out and says they're bisexual, then sometimes their male identified partner says, "Oh, so then you must be open to threesomes." Like that's like a green light. Like, let's get another woman into the bedroom. And that is absolutely not okay to directly connect. Now that female identified person could totally be game for that threesome experience, but it's not because she is bisexual. And so there's this really icky and pressure double standard that I think is perpetuated by the corn industry and this like ultimate fantasy for the heterosexual male to be able to enjoy this experience with two female identified people. And some of these, yeah, I think you get like this double standard situation I'm illustrating. So I love to empower my clients when they say, "Oh, I'm shy," or "Oops, I've came out to my client, my partner, and now all he wants to do is have a threesome. Now, what do I do?" Because actually, they might want to be exploring a relationship with the same sex, but not have it be connected. And that's a totally different conversation. That's would be talking about opening up to ethical non-monogamy if they were going to have that experience.
Yeah, I think people often assume that if someone is in a relationship with someone of the opposite gender, they must be heterosexual. But that is not necessarily true. Attraction and identity are far more complex than who someone is currently dating. Many bisexual, pansexual, or queer individuals are in opposite gender relationships and still very much identify with those identities. So it's a reminder that who you are with doesn't erase who you are.
Oh, I love that. Who you're with doesn't erase who you are. Yes, cheers to that.
And on that note, some of my clients also think um, there's something wrong with them and they're condemned. They condemn, especially by the divine, and they're very much in torn and in so much pain. They also feel like they don't deserve to be part of a spiritual religious community that sometimes they're hungry and longing for. Some of my clients also ask, can you take this feeling away? So there's also this feeling around shame with the identity that I often encounter.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to like my personal journey because I identified as bisexual from a young age. And there was so much shame. I'm like, I can't be bisexual. I love guys. And also I was raised Catholic, so there's that religious stigma around being any part of even just a smidge of gay or queer. So yeah, I identify with the clients that you're talking about. So thank you for that, Dion. So let's now talk about what bi actually looks like. Okay. So going off of the Kinsey scale, bi can look like all kinds of things, like Norland had mentioned, different kinds of relationships. There's ethical non monogamy if you want to explore a partner relationship with someone outside your monogamous relationship. So it just means monogamy means one person. So if you're just seeing one person, it's ethical non monogamy, meaning you're open to seeing many people, which is different from or kind of similar to a polyamorous relationship. Yeah. So, but bisexual, there's all different kinds of people out in the world. There's like how many? Is that 8 billion people now in the world? 7 billion, something like that. So there's all different kinds of folks out there. So, Dion, you had talked about the Klein sexual orientation grid.
Mm,
So if you could talk about that.
yeah. For some people, the client sexual orientation grid can be very, very helpful because it opens the doorway to a more nuances interpretation of sexual orientation that encompass more than the Kinsey model. It's developed in 1978 by Dr. Fritz Klein, and they really ask us to consider the linear model of Kinsey scale. So it's critical to note that the Klein grid does not function as a diagnostic tool. It doesn't evaluate or define an individual's sexual orientation, just like Kinsey scale, but it acts as a more like an educational framework that hopefully can really bring in a more rich or nuanced understanding of the intricate nature of our human sexuality. So there's the website that I always refer my client to go to. It's called the bi.org adaptation, and they really a good website. They updated all the languages and align with a more contemporary perspective of sexual identity. So yeah, go check them out if that's useful. But I also like what you say, Dominic. There are many different ways to be bi, and including especially with people that still reconciling their identity with their spirituality as well. So there are many different forms.
Yeah, again, there's like 7 billion plus people out in the world. There's all different kinds of people. And
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know the percentage. I should break it down at some point. But the percentage of people in the world that are actually bi and have never had an experience, but they actually might be bi, right?
And some feel comfortable in that. Some feel some choose, and some have a peace in remaining in the normative heterosexual community. Of course, there's going to be a lot of work around that, but some also choose. It's about that that ability to also having that peaceful choice in their life, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Like I am a married woman in a heterosexual relationship with my husband, but I'm a bisexual woman. I'm not going to go and explain that in great detail at this moment. That's a whole nother episode. Note to self, uh, ladies. But we should be looking at, what does being bi mean to you?
And a real quick add here is this idea of a romantic orientation. So, we're talking about bisexuality as a sexual orientation that focuses on our sexual attraction. And there's also across this beautiful spectrum of orientations, sometimes people identify with, well, I'm sexually oriented in this way, but I'm romantically oriented in this way. And usually this comes up more in the conversation around asexuality, but I do hear this conversation come up with bisexual orientation and who they feel more stronger desire to be romantic with versus their sexual orientation. So,
Yeah, and I think that yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up, Norland. Yes, so I could say I'm romantically and sexually with my husband, but there's the sexual piece where I'm like, no, the women piece is like, I don't want to be romantic with a woman. Sorry, ladies. No romance for me there. But there's this something about, I'm just identifying in my perspective from personal experience so that you have a better idea, folks. Yeah, so thank you so much for bringing that up, Norlin. Nicole, did you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I think that it's not just a phrase or someone is half gay or half straight. Bisexuality is a valid and complete identity on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And many bisexual people often feel overlooked or misunderstood, not just in straight spaces, but sometimes even in the queer communities.
Yeah, I remember there was this woman I was friends with, and she said, and she was a gay woman, and she's like, "You are not. You can't just be either one or the other. To be in this queer community, how can you identify yourself as bi?" I'm like, "Whoa." Yeah, no, I know I'm bi. I don't need to have sex with you to prove that. It's and another man, because we were talking about threesomes at the time. But yeah, it was before I was married. But yeah, it's just this thing where there is no half and half. Some people are, but again, it goes back to the spectrum of romantic and sexual existence. Yeah.
I just love what you say earlier, about finishing the sentence. What does being bi to me means? And sometimes writing a letter to yourself with this
Hmm.
prompt can be really helpful. Yeah, write it down, no censor. Include everything. What does the divine think that I'm by? You can then start teasing out all this experiences that you're feeling inside, and sometimes externalizing it and see it can be a really powerful exercise to do.
And I know we're talking about bi, but these are all prompts and stuff that anyone that identifies with any sexuality can use as well.
Yes, yes,
That's a
yes.
great prompt.
We're looking at bi, joy, pride, and allyship. So there's something beautiful about being able to, well, it goes back to labels. If you like labeling yourself, if you like labels, then there's something really joyful about being able to identify and be like, no, this is who I am. And that may shift and change over time. Like, I'm bi, or I'm gay or queer, omnisexual, or whatever you are, right? There's something really powerful and beautiful in being able to name yourself. What's something an ally has done for you that really made a difference? Or someone who identifies as an ally for the LGBTQA plus community. Yeah.
Yeah, I was introduced to the orientation of heteroflexibility as an option, and
Yes, I remember that when that first came out. I'm hetero flexible. I'm like, oh, okay, so you're kind of bi then. I hear you.
and it's been really useful to be at play parties and the environment, especially in the introduction part of the play party before the juiciness happens, which the conversations are juicy too. But sometimes a part of these spaces, there's this opportunity to introduce yourself. Hi, I'm so and so. I'm from here, and I got to hear this a new term, heteroflexibility, and an ally really helped me. I latched onto that really quickly, and for years I was like, "This is what I am," right? And I got comfort and connection through this term. But an ally really allowed me throughout conversation to let go of this um, I'm by enough, because the reason why I latched on, and that label for a time was very comforting and safe and gave me a place to start. For me, I realized, well, I actually am bisexual. And for definition's sake, heteroflexibility is really saying that you're primarily straight or heterosexual, but you have this experience in a lesser percentage um, of your interactions that are towards the same sex. So when I was operating under this idea that I needed to have proof of my bisexuality, I latched onto this word heteroflexible. But then I found out, oh, I don't actually need to have this proof of my bisexuality. I now identify with this. And just going back to your question, what has an ally done? And an ally really just allowed me the space to have this conversation about both of these terms.
And what do you wish more allies understood about bisexuality?
I think allies need to understand that being bi isn't about who someone is with, it's about who they are. They deserve the same recognition, respect, and space to be fully themselves without constantly having to explain or defend it.
Yeah.
I'm basing this comment based on the culture that I live in. There's a lot of people who feel that they have the rights to judge. So leave the judgment to the divine. We are only human after all. And who knows, right? So then I'm really a big advocate of adopting a non-judgment stance, because most of uh, my bi clients are already internalizing and have very critical thoughts and shame and feelings about the struggles sometimes. And they may also experience religious trauma, shaming, and rejections from a very such a young age. So allow a non-judgmental space. Leave the judgment to the divine, and allow them to truly explore what they need in a very safe space.
So, if you're bisexual, questioning, or somewhere in this beautiful spectrum, this is your reminder that you are valid. You don't need permission, proof, or partner to own your identity. You are whole.
I love that.
Yeah, here.
You are love. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So, folks, here's a challenge for you. So, pick one way that you can show up for the Bi Plus community this week, or this month, or this year. Maybe it's correcting a harmful joke, reading up on bi history or queer history, or asking your queer friends how they're doing. So, whatever it is, just do it with love and let us know. We'd love to hear your stories in a future episode. And I will leave you with this quote: I am not half, I am not whole, I am not confused, I am expansive, I am bi and proud, I'm queer and proud. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and stay sexy.
Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, send us some love by sharing, hitting subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps us connect to more incredible people like you. If you want to learn more about sex coaching or therapy, you can find us at sexandbreakfastpodcast.com, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at sexandbreakfastpodcast. The people helping us cook this all up are Michael Merle, creating our tasty tunes, dishing out our audio and video is Max Rainier, and our delectable visual designs by Brie Vilaubi.